A couple of things. One is life partner is not an SVP status. Just in case anybody was getting jealous. And the other thing I was going to say is that Eastside Pathways, which we're going to talk about, was part of it at SIFP. It was a great honor to be part of it. So we were up against Ethan before. So Paul, the idea that we would have to follow him now again and be compared, that's a little challenging. So thanks a lot. But anyway, well, last January, I found myself sitting in one of those little chairs in the library at Lake Hills Elementary School, which is a school just a couple miles from here in Bellevue. And I'm feeling pretty good about myself because I had agreed to attend. Another parent asked me to go, and so I was doing the right thing. And I was frankly thinking ahead a little bit. Is this going to be a $150 or $250 thing? Waiting for the pitch. And what I started to realize is that what the presenter was telling me was totally contrary to what I expected to hear. At this school in Bellevue, kids were arriving in the morning hungry, some coming from broken homes where there might be violence, a majority of the school speaking a language other than English. And in this context, teachers, putting on a heroic fight to help these kids achieve grade level before they fall irreparably behind. I heard a fact that 70% of kids that arrive at Lake Hills Elementary qualify for free and reduced lunch. And that was up just from 50% a couple years before. And I didn't know it then, but that was the highest number on the whole East Side. And in fact, it's about the same as Beacon Hill in Seattle, or Tukwila, or even Oakland in California. So I started listening with a different set of ears. And I have to say, I was honestly shocked, not only that this level of need and this challenge of supporting these kids was happening in Bellevue, I was shocked because I didn't know about it. I considered myself an engaged and active parent and community member, but this was happening only 3 miles from where I'd worked at Microsoft, and only a mile from where 3 children went to school at Stevenson Elementary. How did I miss this radical change in our community? It was disorienting. I wasn't sitting in an affluent suburban school listening to a pitch for another field trip. I was in an inner city environment that was where the teachers were struggling to help kids achieve an ability to reach their life's potential. And the struggle wasn't going well. Well, that was my entry point to the discussion that's become Eastside Pathways. Now, it happens that in the previous month, a group at SVP had been talking about this concept that Paul referred to, collective impact. And it's an approach that a group in Cincinnati has taken to try to organize the community around some shared and insistent goals to support kids in a unique way, in a new way, that can help change the tide of urban challenge and failure. And so as I was sitting in that little chair in the library, sort of the light bulb went on. Maybe that kind of approach that we've just been hearing about could be applied here in Bellevue. Maybe it could help address these needs in Lake Hills and sort of help Bellevue adapt to the changes in this community.
About the same time that Bill was experiencing this and learning about collective impact with SVP, I was following a collective impact effort in South King County and South Seattle because of my connections with youth development in Seattle that began with my work with Social Venture Kids, SVK, Social Venture Partners Teen Grant Making Program. So when Bill and Janet started talking about doing collective impact in Bellevue, I thought, I want to be part of that. I want to take the experience I've gained in youth development and bring it to my own community.
Well, in the spirit of sharing what we know, that's me?
Oh, that's me. Sorry,
yes,
I missed my spot.
This is our first time through. just bear with us.
Okay. By mid-March, after many meetings, cups of coffee, and lots of introductions, about 20 people representing organizations like the PTSA, the City of Bellevue, the school district, faith-based organizations, and nonprofits came together to talk about collective impact in Bellevue and agreed to embark on a journey together. Now, 8 months later, we've been asked to share what it's like working on this collective effort with 50 or so organizations deeply involved. Not because we have all the answers, or because we are uniquely responsible. In fact, lots of people in this room have been engaged in helping Eastside Pathways come to life.
So in the spirit of sharing at least what we know, we decided to try to find the right frame to tell this story and realized that maybe the best point of departure was sort of from the point of view of the other great journey that the two of us have taken. And so we decided that the real lessons can be summarized as everything I needed to know about collective impact I learned on the road in an RV. So what's that? So one thing we've learned is a shared compass is more powerful than a map. So what's that mean? So about 10 years ago, just to explain, we took a year off. So our kids were getting a little older, and we thought if we don't do this kind of thing now, they won't appreciate or maybe even tolerate, maybe even permit us to take this kind of trip. So we pulled them out of school, we geared up for homeschooling, and hit the open road. National parks, Route 66, meeting new people, time as a family, all of that, and a lot more.
So, ever since Gettysburg, we'd been stopping at Civil War sites. Bill had become a bit of an expert, some say a fanatic. The rest of us were less so. So just after the new year in 2003, we'd gotten off the main highway to visit Andersonville, a Civil War site in southern Georgia. And we're navigating back to reconnect with I-75 to make it to Florida. We'd relied on this GPS power PC to keep us tracking, but somehow we'd missed a couple of turns. The map says we're supposed to be on a highway, but the tooth-rattling washboard and red clay outside says back road. What's worse, the map tells us there's a stream up ahead. Our 40-foot RV is likely to put any backroads bridge to an unwanted stress test. Thankfully, it was just a culvert, and we rejoined the Georgia road system shortly after. We mentioned that a key moment last spring was gathering a group of community leaders to discuss and hopefully agree to the idea of moving ahead with a collective impact approach.
So we'd invited this group over actually to our house, about 20 people, all different roles in the community, most of whom we didn't know. So I was a little nervous about this meeting. It was kind of formative meeting. We'd been talking and planning, and here we're going to gather this group that could make a decision in favor of moving forward or not. So I'd have preferred to meet with them in advance, but that wasn't the way things were shaping up. So the plan was we had watched a webinar at SVP, and I thought if we could share that webinar with this group, it might help to first get everybody on the same page with regard to what we're talking about and carry some weight to help move the conversation forward in the direction of maybe a vote to proceed. And the way it was set up is in our basement, we have a TV room. And so we set up these rented chairs, and the 20 people filed way downstairs, and they're sitting themselves down as I'm getting the show ready. And I can kind of hear them cluttering and talking in the background. It starts to get quiet. They're obviously expecting me to start. And I'm focused on this blinking light that's on this projector that we'd owned for 5 years. 5 years of football games, Xbox. Our kid stresses this out every day. 2 hours before I fired it all up, it's working great. That moment with the 20 people whom I didn't know, no projector, no webinar, no plan.
It was a little terrifying to watch. A presenter's worst nightmare, but all I could think was, better him than me. But the attendees didn't seem to mind. They weren't flustered at all. In fact, they seemed a little relieved at not having to sit through a 40-minute webinar. Surprisingly, they had all read the collective impact article that was published in the Stanford Social Innovation Review previously, or in January, I guess. When is the last time you were at a meeting where everyone had done the pre-reading? So they wanted to talk about it. They wanted to share what they thought, ask questions, and learn. There was a sense of excitement and agreement. We want to do this in Bellevue.
So I carried away a lesson from that. What I thought was a disaster, and all of a sudden putting me on the spot, was because of this conception I had of what leadership was about. Here I was hosting this meeting. Obviously, it was my responsibility to make sure it reaches a successful conclusion, and I didn't know whether I had that in me. But what I found out in that experience is that's not what I was there for. All we were there to do, is put these people in a place where they can talk through the situation they're in and see if they can find common ground. it's like Pam was saying earlier as a coach, is that she's not there to give advice, or she discovered not there to give advice, she's there to unlock what in this case, the group already has to offer. Leadership just meant giving the group a chance to find its way. So what's the lesson? No map, no plan is going to get you from where you start to where you think you're heading. It's only the collective will, the willingness to move in a common direction that's going to get you there.
Lesson number 2. Sometimes going downhill is harder than going up. Originally, we intended to go to Winchester, Virginia to tour yet another Civil War museum, but decided instead to take the Skyline Drive through Shenandoah National Park. It was beautiful. The drive tops a hill ridge above the Shenandoah River Valley. The hills fade off into the hazy distance, and the leaves were coppery red and gold.
So when we planned this trip, it was a little daunting to drive around this 20-ton RV. We thought the hard part would be towing that mass up the west face of the Rockies. Well, we didn't really give enough credit to these little foothills of Appalachians, but they've got some altitude to them too. And if you think it's fun getting 20 tons uphill, start driving it downhill. So what happened was, with these turns and the long descent, it kept speeding up, and on every corner, Susan would have to brake. And pretty soon, we saw that the tire gauge that measures the temperature on the tire was heating up. And the more we'd brake, the hotter it'd get. And by the time we went down the 3,000 feet down that windy road, Susan's hands were white from gripping the wheel, and the tire alarm was going off. And what we were able to do is basically limp down the road, miraculously find a truck repair shop that could repair this tire, which, by the way, in the South, it cost us $40. I'm going back. But anyway, and we spent the night in a Walmart parking lot, which was a first, so we had that to thank.
Like our descent from the Shenandoah National Park, Eastside Pathways got off to a fast start. The 20 folks at that evening event reached out to others. We formed a core team. We wrote a mission vision statement. And then on June 10th, we officially kicked off the real work. We'd mapped out an ambitious plan for the summer, feeling that we could get more done in less time than Cincinnati or any of the other communities. Skip ahead to this September. We'd reassembled the whole group again to review and hopefully approve the goals identified by the summer work groups.
So another big meeting. But this time, by the time I presented the intro slides that kind of set up the meeting, it became pretty obvious that this big group didn't carry with it the goodwill that had sort of formed in the two subgroups that had led up to it. The plan had maybe just to present, review, and maybe tweak the goals, and then focus on the work to come. But the reality was we were heading down the hill too fast, and friction was building up. Someone brought up the idea of equity, and shouldn't equity be in the center of our goal statements? Someone else pointed out that, well, our vision statement is centered around the idea of every child. So the conversation went back and forth, and you know what? We weren't actually disagreeing. What was happening was we hadn't built the trust across this group that people had confidence that term every child carried the weight that all of us needed it to take. So what happened? Well, basically, by the time I got back to the podium, we had not agreed on the goals. We had agreed that we needed to move forward, but forward in a way that let us all have confidence that these terms that we were agreeing to, this vision statement, really meant what we needed it to mean. So specifically, with the core team, which is the leadership group, took it on ourselves to start the process to craft a values statement, like Janice was talking about earlier. We thought we could kind of skip by that because we were making such progress through the summer, but you know what? If you go too fast, too far, pretty soon you're going to have to pull over, and that's what we had to do. One last parallel, I promise. How is SVP like an RV park? So imagine you've been driving this 20-ton rig down the highway for 3 to 5 hours. Starting to get in the evening, you pull off into a small town, maybe go back down the side street to the RV park where you're going to spend the night. You're driving down a small gravelly lane. You're in a special place. You probably know that by the time you start to pull in, because the guy from next door comes out and helps you back into your spot. As you're hooking up the hoses and the electrical plug, people come over and talk, asking about your trip or your washing plates. Your kids sneak away and find the playground. Maybe they're joined by some other kids that have been cooped up too long. As you're sitting in the laundromat waiting for your laundry to dry, the guy next to you asks you where you've been and where you're going. And if you've got one of the sort of the nonstop technical problems that seems to accompany a trip across the country, like a clogged drain or a blown fuse or a cooling system that doesn't cool, you'll find people that can commiserate with you and very likely help.
The person next to you might be a retiree, or like us, a family taking a break, or maybe a worker moving along to keep up with the job. You're there for different reasons. You might be heading to different directions, but you're part of a community built around a common love and need to travel, to experience, to learn. At SVP, we're all on our own journeys as well. We want to make a difference, want to learn, want to find a way to create stronger communities, and, in the process, stretch ourselves. The most meaningful learning experiences I've had in the past 10 years, certainly the most inspiring, have been hearing the amazing work of SVP partners and investees. SVP is a chance to share, to compare notes, to grow. It's also a chance to be connected to causes and people that are more exciting, impactful, ambitious than any we could have found on our own.
Eastside Pathways is that kind of audacious, aim-high effort, creating a system and a community that can truly support the needs of kids like those we heard about at Lake Hills Elementary, helping them achieve their life potential. It can happen in part because of this network and the knowledge and the energy and the shared purpose that this network inspires. So whether you've been here for years, or you just pulled in tonight, welcome, and thanks for making this a great network.